we regret to inform you that your husband, Michael, was killed in service this morning. At this time, and on a mission that they were on it. And it's unlike anything I've ever been able to describe.
In our podcast, Hearing the Unheard Stories of Transformation, we discuss a variety of sensitive subjects such as suicide, suicidal ideation, self-harm, abuse, and faith crisis. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to our podcast, Hearing the Unheard Stories of Transformation, presented by Pause Wellness. I'm your host, Eric Stauffer. I'm very pleased to welcome a dear friend of mine today on our podcast, Amy Alleman. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Eric.
How you doing?
Good.
Good.
Always good to see you.
For our listeners, we've known each other a long time.
Long time.
You're a cousin of my wife.
Yes.
And since I started dating Emily, my wife, that's how long we've known each other and been close friends.
I still remember her coming to my apartment and talking to us about you. And as she was talking, she was ripping up a napkin and she wrote Eric plus Emily in the napkin pieces, these little squares.
And
I took a picture of it. I know she does. I should find that picture and send it to you.
Well, there's this funny story about when we met. You were working at Aggie Ice Cream, right?
Yes.
And one of the dates I wanted to take Emily on, she was actually out with someone else and she got work off. And so when I think of that story,
yes.
She'll get work off for someone else, but not for me.
Not for me.
Yeah. And the people at work were like, "Oh, it's that really handsome guy on campus, so go for it." I won though, so that's right. That's all that matters. I beat him out.
Booyah.
Yeah.
I got this.
So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your background?
Okay, so my name's Amy. I grew up in the Valley, in Cache Valley. I was born in Hiram, second of 5. I have an older sister, a younger sister, and then 2 younger brothers. Kind of just your standard childhood, growing up, playing some sports in the summer, back in the days when you found everybody by just seeing whose bikes was at people's houses, type thing. I graduated from Mountain Crest High School in the year 2000 with Emily. Have another fun picture like that.
Yep.
Yeah. Graduation night. Boy, it's pretty sad when you can't think much.
Why don't you tell us
that.
about like how you met Michael?
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm like, I need this direction. So after I graduated high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, like college wise in a way or anything, really anything. So I just thought, well, I'll get a job, and stuff. And so I originally, like I said, started at Aggie Ice Cream, working with Emily, different things like that. But then I needed insurance. So I got a job at Macy's grocery store, which, and stuff. And anyways, and so I got a job in there in March of 2001. And as I was working there, I noticed that there was this guy that would come in on the night crew and it's going to sound weird, but he was the most unfriendly looking person. And that really attracted me.
Just like he was intriguing to you?
It was intriguing because he just was not, he walked around with this like heavy footstep and this body language that was just like, don't talk to me. Don't look at me. I just want to be left alone. And I was like, I want to crack that shell. I kind of want to know what's underneath. I don't know. And just from the very beginning, I would just, I hope I don't sound creepy, but I would just watch him. I was just like, there's something about this guy that just, I don't know. From the second I saw him, I was just like, I want to know him. I want to know more about him and stuff. So anyways, so I was working during the days, but he would work at night. So the only time I really saw him was when he would come in, for his shift. It would start at like 10 o'clock at night. Right. And stuff. So I'd only see him if I was working like right before the midnight checker started at midnight, type thing. And anyways, and but I never had a chance to even talk to him because he never even, he would just literally clock in. I'd see him walk by and go back to the back wall to start changing things, doing all the stuff that he did back there, working in the back and working on that main, you remember that, working at that main deal wall there and stuff. So, anyways, and
because I started working there not too long, or like around that.
It was
same
right around
time,
that same time.
I remember you guys working similar shifts. So.
Yes. And anyways, so what happened is they asked me to be the night checker because the previous one was going to go on a mission. And so they asked me if I would cover it for like a month because I wasn't going to school. So like my schedule was a little more flexible, and I literally kind of thought, ooh, here's my chance, and stuff. So man, you ever look back at your youth sometimes and you're like, man, I seem really pathetic. But I would get ready to go to work at midnight, but I'd be curling my hair and, putting on a skirt and just like, obviously following the dress code of the job, but anyways, just trying to catch his eye. But he would come through my line like for breaks with all the other guys and would not say a word to me. And I thought, man, he must just really hate me. You know what I mean? Because he was just this quiet, solemn guy. And anyways, but I was just like, okay. And I even wore this fake wedding ring just to, because there were sometimes some not very, interesting people. Let's just put it that way. Interesting people that would come through at night sometimes and stuff. But every time he came through my line, I would just slip that in my pocket so he wouldn't think I was taken.
That's a good strategy for safety.
I know. Well, it is, but I'm like, I don't want him to think I'm taken. So anyways, so he would, so what happened was we got all the way through to the end of the month. This is like, we're getting near the end of November, and I didn't see him for probably like a week. And I thought, oh no, he left. I never asked, because I thought maybe I'll just ask him out. Like, I don't know, what's the worst he can do? No, like, Anyways, and he came back to work on the last night before I moved back to days. It's my last night as a night checker, and I thought, oh yes, this is it. So he comes through my line, and he buys his stuff, and he asked me, so are this is the first time he's ever talked to me. Are you the permanent midnight checker? And me, I'm like, actually, I'm moving back today, so tonight's my last night. Practically like wink, wink, like type thing. And he just went on his merry way, and I was like,
there he goes.
Well, there we go. Yeah. And anyway, so then he came through on his second one, and I still remember he bought a banana. And it was 21 cents. I don't know why I remember weird facts. That's something, you know that about me. But anyways, and I turned back to him, and he was just like, do you want to go to a play? And then me being the kind of person that I am, awkward, is like, me? There's nobody else in the store, by the way. It's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
He's the only one up front, and there's none of the other workers. And I'm like, and he's like, yeah. Anyway, so we went on our first date. We went to Romeo and Juliet up at USU on November 30th.
So the scary, rough exterior, cold guy, the first thing he asked you on is to a play.
Yeah, to a play.
Yeah.
Romeo and Juliet, because he loves Shakespeare. And I love Shakespeare. And I know Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy, but for some reason, I love that tragedy. Right. I don't know why, but I do.
So you cracked the shell right away. You can tell.
Yeah.
He's hiding who he really is.
And then I found out from other people that he had been wanting to ask me out, but he thought I was too young.
Oh, wow.
Because he's like about 4 years older than me. Which when you're kind of younger like that, it seems like a big thing. And then obviously the older you get, you're like, oh, numbers.
I was okay with it.
I know.
Emily's 4 years than me. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, he was, and just even from that point on, I was just like, I'm gone. I'm a goner. Just everything about him was just inviting, and I felt like home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long did you date?
4 weeks.
4 weeks. Then you were engaged.
Yep. So our first date was November 30th of 2001, and then we got engaged on December 31st. Yep. So 4 weeks later, I always used to say 4 weeks in a day, or whatever it was, just to, But it's so interesting because I don't know, it felt like so much longer.
Yeah.
It really did. Those 4 weeks felt like 4 months, or just everything about being with him. Like, I know I already said that, but felt like being home.
Yeah.
It really did.
And then how long after the engagement? How long was your engagement?
So our engagement was about 4 months.
Yeah.
So we got married. We got married on May 8th. Right after he finished up that semester of school. He was going to Utah State to be. And so here's another thing. This gruff exterior guy is going into elementary education.
Yeah. Yep.
to be an
He
elementary
looks like he'll rip my head off, but he wants to teach young kids, you know. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was his love. He loved teaching kids. He connected with them on a level that I've never seen anybody do that. Just those young little minds that are just so full of wonder and fascination. And he's always just loved that. And yeah.
You know, as a passive observer of this, when it was all going down, I have to admit, like, some of the cultural assumptions that we make about certain things, they cause you to throw up red flags or something like that. And you didn't do that. Like, you weren't scared. You just were like, I want to know this person, and I want to know what makes him tick. And what an amazing story you guys have.
Yeah.
And Emily and I have always been, like, when we think about being in love, we're always comparing ourselves to the level of Amy and Micheal. We're always like, is this the level of Amy and Micheal?
That's really sweet.
You know? It's the truth. You can ask her. Okay. It's the truth.
I mean,
we do that.
I believe you, but yeah.
So, you guys have an amazing story. You get married, and then you had 2 boys.
Yeah. And in fact, they were really fast as well. So we found out we were pregnant 6 weeks after we were married.
Yeah.
You know, with our son Kai. And then he was born a month early because I had toxemia. I had a lot of health issues with him. And so we had been married for literally 9.5 months to the day when he was born. And so when you eat your wedding cake on your first anniversary, we had a 3-month-old in our arms. We're like, hey, happy first anniversary.
Yeah.
And then Kenneth, our other son, was born just a little under 2 years later. So December of 2004. And it's so funny because it seemed like when Kenneth was born, I was like, oh my gosh, Kai's so huge. They're never gonna, and obviously that's not the truth because they're like best friends. And in fact, Kenneth just grew a lot faster. And so a lot of times I get asked if they were twins a lot. And I'm like, nope, he's like 2 years older than him. Yeah. So, which, but.
Yeah. One of my favorite memories of Micheal is, again, I saw the rough exterior and I knew he was kind of a mystery man, and that you were seeing this mystery. And then as we got to be closer friends, I started to see this family man, this husband and this father. Yeah. And so one of my dearest memories of Micheal was him with his bike. And then he got that trailer that he could pull the boys in and ride around with his sons. And I was so caught up and busy. I had young kids too at the same time. And I just thought, my dedication level is not where it needs to be. Micheal's figuring this out, and he loves his family. Yes. And so that's what I remember, a hallmark of Micheal for sure. Yeah.
And that's something that was one of the other things, is just his love for his family, just even like his own family, but just the level of love that he has always shown me and our kids. Like, and I think back to, like, I'm so glad I didn't judge him on preconceived notions, like the fact that he didn't serve a mission, and the fact that he, for our church, and that he had a wild youth, went through some things, but came back to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And, and to me, that was a huge level of strength in someone to, abandon that lifestyle and to recommit himself to God.
That's such a huge point, because I think sometimes we think that to get real strength in our spirituality is to only live righteously. But it doesn't mean we encourage sinful behavior necessarily, but sin is inevitable. Yeah. And the recovery of sin, or the changing, the growth, the learning from, really helps us be who we really need to be.
Yeah, no, it really does. And, and I still remember him when he was kind of telling me, when we were in that small 4 weeks that we were dating, but it felt like longer, that he told me, like, kind of like admitted, hey, I didn't go on a mission. And I said, I know that. Like, you know, I knew it, and it didn't bother. And he kind of looked at me like, and you still want to date me? And I was just like, it broke my heart.
Because he was anticipating that it's a deal breaker.
That was a deal breaker. Yeah. And I wanted to kind of slap every other person he had ever dated and also thank them for leaving him for me.
And thank you.
And thank you.
How dare you?
How dare you, but thank you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Kind of that double-edged sword. But yeah, and I think about all of the things that I would have missed out on, and it makes me just kind of physically ill. But I'm so glad that, you know, and I told him too, I said, well, hey, I go through things. I have the same, you know, mine might not be as visible as what yours are from like an outsider view.
Right.
But, you know,
I'm
so glad that you love me.
Yeah.
Despite all my, you know.
Isn't that the truth of everyone?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it really is.
If we're really like, if we get rid of the facade deep down, we all need help.
Yeah.
We all struggle.
Yeah. 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 I wasn't any different than him.
Yeah.
Nothing. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So why don't you take us down this adventure?
Okay.
So 9/11 happens.
Yes.
And I know that was an impactful thing.
Yeah. Which was just a few months before we started dating.
Yep.
You know, I remember that I did my first marathon like 11 days after it. Cause I remember I did it on November 22nd, and everybody thought there was going to be another attack because it was 11 days later. And like, you know, and I remember riding the bus up there and just being like, oh, what's going on? You know, it's just very uncertain time. Yeah. In our country and just different things like that. Which, by the way, that was another really cute thing that he told me. He's like, when you told me you did a marathon, he was like, oh, that is nice.
He really liked that.
Yeah. And for me, I was like, you're an elementary school teacher? Like a guy who loves kids, like just loves to, I don't know, because I know you're probably going to disagree with me, but I'm not very nurturing.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? Or like I struggle with it in some ways. In some ways. And I just loved knowing that he just, I thought, oh good, he'll
became natural to him.
Yeah, he's very natural. And mine was a different type of natural, but that's where we have strengths and weaknesses and we help each other out. And that's, I felt like that was our marriage. We just really balance each other out. So sorry, that was a side note.
No, you're good.
But so 9/11 happened. My husband, very patriotic, you know, and I grew up very patriotic as well. My dad instilled, my parents both did, but, you know, they instilled a level of love for our country, and that, you know, you stand up when that flag comes, you know, and you respect this country, you respect this flag, you know, and I do not at all feel like that was forced on me as far as like, you know, like I have always felt this love for this country that we have. Yeah. So Micheal graduated school in 2004. I was pregnant with Kenneth at the time. We couldn't find any jobs up here, so we went down to Las Vegas, which was interesting. I actually have a lot of really fond memories of Vegas. Met a lot of wonderful people there who really impacted my life and were great friends that I still keep in touch with today. We decided, to come back when we found out that we missed our family a lot, you know, and stuff. So we decided to move back in 2006. So Micheal found a job teaching at Nibley Elementary. And so he got a job there. We found an apartment, all these different things, you know, but during that time we spent like 4 months apart because he was on year-round school. Yeah. So he had to finish teaching, you know, so I was living with my mom and his mom back and forth. You know, he had our one car down there so he could travel, obviously. So I would have people that would shuttle me places. We had so much support and love that would help us through this, you know, hard time. And it was really hard to be without him, you know, during that time. It was just like, man, this is really, really hard to, you know, have him be gone for like 2-3 weeks at a time, and then he'd be able to come home on a weekend or whatever, you know, and during that time, our son had a skull fracture. He fell when we were camping. We had to life flight him down to Primary Children's, you know, it was just, there was a lot of things going on, you know, and it really tore him up that he couldn't be there to be with his son when he was going through that, you know, that was a hard separation, you know, but he came up here, started teaching 5th grade at Nibley Elementary. You know, there were lots of great teachers, but man, when you start out a school year quoting, you know, Star Wars and Yoda, like I think you got a lot of, especially boys that are really going to like you as a teacher, but even the girls, they just loved having him as a teacher. Anyways, so we were in our 2nd year there, and we had just had Thanksgiving at my parents' house. So this is 2007. And we were driving home. We had an apartment just down in Logan, that we lived in. And he said, hey, we need to talk. And I was like, duh. Have you ever heard a good conversation come out of we need to talk?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't exist. Right?
Right.
At least I didn't think so. But anyways, so I was just like sitting there thinking in my head, what is he going to say? I mean, really, I'm like, he's an elementary school teacher. I'm a stay-at-home mom. Like, and inwardly, my brain audibly meant to, oh, he's tired of me. Even though he had never shown that. He had never once portrayed that or anything, but my insecure mind, growing up automatically goes like, well, oh, he doesn't want to be with me anymore. And I, sometimes I'm just like, oh my word. Like, sometimes you think, why did I think that, Yeah. Those thinking things that we do. Anyways. And so he said, what do you think about me joining the military? I'll tell you what, Eric, I didn't change it all, but inwardly my jaw like dropped down to the floor. I was like, okay, that's like, I think the last thing I could possibly imagine. I thought maybe he would say, hey, like, what do you think if we maybe move to a different state, try a different school or whatever? I don't know. I knew that he was kind of having a hard time teaching because there was just so many politics involved. And he struggled with that because he's like, I just want to teach. I don't want to do all the stuff, I mean, you're a teacher, you know a lot about that type of stuff, and it was just kind of weighing on him a little bit, and anyways. And so I, and immediately my mind went to, because that's what my mind does. My mind's a little dark. It is. And it goes to the immediate worst case scenario. Well, he dies, because we knew what was going on.
Yeah.
The war in Iraq.
Yeah. The war in Iraq was
still
going on.
Yep. Still going on. I mean, at that point we had been at least 6-7 years into it, roughly. Yeah. And, anyways, and well, I mean, I guess since 2001, which is, I feel like was a very catapulting moment of when the dominoes all started to.
Yeah, that's why I brought up 9/11, because it really did.
Yeah, it really was. It's just
chain of events
that led to
this.
Very good way to put it. Anyways, and so I just thought, and so it's funny how our brain does this sometimes, but how it can think through such ramifications in such a small amount of time, kind of reminds me of the movies when things slow down, and that's what I felt like it did. I felt like my brain was going through this and this and this, but really it was just a few seconds, in a way. And I remembered just feeling like this feeling of, I don't know if it was like, it was kind of like a peace, but it was just like, the first thing I said to him was, well, if I ever had to lose you before I was ready, I can't imagine a more noble way for you to go, And right at that moment, I had a little niggle in the back of my head that I realize now was like a spirit prompting that was like, he's not coming back. But you just dismiss it. I dismissed it as just me being
intrusive thought.
Yeah, intrusive thought. Yeah. Me being just going down the darkest path, and stuff. But I always kept that there in the back of my head. But anyways, so that was obviously Thursday. We fasted over the weekend, where we go without, food and water for a time and pray for special guidance for a time in our lives. And, do you want me to share that story? Like, I don't know.
Sure.
Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to go over. Like,
no, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, tell it.
So we were sitting in church, and Micheal, for all intents and purposes, has already received his answer, obviously. But he said, we're a team. I'm not just going to up and leave So in a way, I was like, well, how dare you put all that pressure on me? Just because we like to tease each other and stuff. I was like, oh, great. So, And anyway, so we were sitting there, and our ward was doing what was called a hymnal testimony meeting. And so a testimony meeting is where people, get up and they share their testimony about Jesus Christ and, the things that they've learned or gained, right? Well, this one was, so the hymns that we sing, somebody would get up and say, I really love this hymn. Here's a little reason why. And then they would say, and I really want to sing this verse. And then we as a congregation would sing that verse. Oh, and this was the first one I'd ever done. Yeah. And I thought, this is beautiful. But we were sitting in the back, 'cause we had little kids, and you got Cheerios everywhere and you're doing all the things, right? Because at this point, let's see, Kenneth's not even 3. he'll be 3 in just a few weeks. And then Kai is like he's almost 5. He'll be 5 in like February or something like that. Anyways, and so, and I just remembered thinking, I really want to hear the second verse of I Know That My Redeemer Lives. I listened to that verse after I had a lot of health scares with Kai. And it talks about God quieting all your fears and God wiping away your tears. Silencing all your fears, calming your troubled heart. Like all these different things that I want to hear that. But I did not want to go up there because I thought I would fall because I'm very clumsy as well. Like I have a hard time walking on my own 2 feet sometimes, and I was trying to feel the Spirit and just all these different things. Right. So I just kept thinking, I really want to sing that, but I don't want to go up there. And as the meeting went on, I'm like, oh my heck, this is not happening. So I was going to go up, and literally right as I was about to stand up, my visiting teacher, who had only just barely been assigned to me, she'd only come to me once. Her name's Liz Livingston. So remember that.
And a visiting teacher is someone that's kind of assigned
so someone kind of like assigned
minister
to
you.
See you and, how you doing, checking, like just being a part of your life, and stuff. And so, she had just barely been assigned to me with, and I feel so bad. I can't remember who the other person was, but anyways, she walked straight up there. She just said, I want to sing the second verse of I Know That My Redeemer Lives. And I just felt so many things. And when that song was playing, I just remembered having this conversation with Heavenly Father that was just like, okay, Heavenly Father, we can do this. But I just thought, what if he dies? What if he dies? What if he dies? And I never got an answer that said he's not going to die. But all I heard was, it's going to be okay because I've given you my son. And me being the type of person that I am, is like, but that will be so hard. What if he dies? And like I said, he never once told me he wouldn't, but he's just like, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And then, and I felt it all the way through my whole body. I've never really had an experience like that. You know what I mean? And anyways, and then the very next, and nobody knew, not a single soul, not our family. Like it was just the 2 of us, the only people that knew that we were doing this. And the very next person went up and asked to sing the Star Spangled Banner. And I was just like, ooh, okay. Okay. And so I looked over at Micheal and I was just like, I just kind of nodded my head at him like, yep, let's do this. And he was just like, okay. So we went to the Army recruiter the next day and we talked about just different options, and stuff. We found out we could get a bigger enlistment bonus if he was able to leave in January. He wasn't contracted with the school, so he could leave. He wasn't breaking any, type of things like that and stuff. And so basically, we signed up. He would leave like January 10th. At this time I was pregnant with our 3rd baby. I miscarried that one just like a week before he left on Christmas Eve. And then on top of that, I had a bunch of health issues with that one too. And it's just like, I look back at that time in my life sometimes and I'm just like, oh man, Heavenly Father was just like,
how do you get through that?
How do you get through that? We went through this massive loss in our family with that because we had wanted more kids, and stuff. And it just, especially I think where we were able to, get pregnant with our other 2 kids rather easily and quickly, it felt like, and stuff. And I was kind of like, man, why isn't this working out? And stuff. And we all do. Yeah. So he
joins the military.
And he left. So I had surgery because I had a ectopic that had ruptured. And so they had to take out one of my fallopian tubes. And so I just had surgery. And then like 4 or 5 days later, it was like, see you in 4 months. He had signed up. Yeah, he went to Cologne. He went to Fort Benning. Well, I think it's Fort Moore now, but it was Fort Benning at the time in Georgia for his basic training. He went into the infantry. So, but here's the funny thing. He really wanted to be a Cav Scout, right? And stuff. And so he was going through basic training and it's hard. He was 30. I mean, the cutoff's 31. At least at the time it was. He's with 18-year-olds. He's kind of, as he said, he's like, I got the old dad bod, and stuff. And he's just nobody could believe why he was there. Why are you doing here? You got a family, you got a degree, you got all these things, But Micheal, he wrote this thing in his journal that said why I joined. And it was all about, how he said, I joined the United States military, because one day I expect to have the honor of meeting George Washington, who was a big hero of his. And he said, on that day, I want to shake his hand, look him in the eye, and know that I've earned it.
Yeah.
And so he was, and then he went on in his journal entry to talk about how, how 2001 changed his relationship with his country, and he's like, I excused myself by being like, well, the war will be over quick and I'm going to school and I'm, and stuff, all valid things, and whatnot. But I think it just sat on him really heavy. And then as the war progressed, he was like, that's why he felt that prompting was like Heavenly Father needed him and he needed us to do this, And, so he said, like, he was talking about how he said, you guys, I excuse myself by saying I have a young family, which also I'm saying is not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. And I don't want anyone listening to this to think that, that's what they have to do.
Right.
But for everybody, it's different. Right.
Yep.
And for him, it was like, he's like, you guys are not a reason to get out of serving. You're exactly the reason I should serve, to stand up and protect and defend you.
Right.
Especially if he has the ability to, and he does. So, so he left for basic training, graduated in May of that year. We found out he actually got sent up to a Cav Scout unit up in Alaska.
Yeah.
So he was up in Alaska with the 5-1 Striker Brigade combat team. And he was up there for just maybe, it wasn't very long, maybe a little under 2 weeks. He calls me and says, hey, like, I got some news. And I'm like, oh, okay, like, what's going on, And he's like, we're deploying in September for a year-long tour, And I'm just like, oh, okay. So now we've already done another 4 months apart, and now we're looking at another 4 months apart, We had 2 weeks in May when he was home, and it's like, okay, well, what do we do? Do we try and move us up? We didn't have a ton of money at the time, and Alaska's considered, I can't remember quite the wording. So if any of Michael's friends are listening or comrades from war, if I say it wrong, I'm sorry. But I think it was considered like an overseas tour of some sort. So there's just a ton of paperwork that we had to go through and stuff. And we might get up there and then he has to leave, and then I'm up in Alaska with 2 young kids, and I don't know what I'm doing. We don't know where I'm going. I have no idea what military lifestyle is like. Yeah. I don't know anything about it. And so we fasted and prayed about that too. And we felt like I just needed to stay here. We decided to move in with his mom and dad, and they're just the most amazing people ever. And so we moved in with them, and I was able to go see him in July for 2 weeks, or no, sorry, about a week. But we couldn't afford to take the kids, and whatnot. And so, and that was really hard. That was really hard on him. He didn't get to see his kids, for long periods of time. That was really hard for him. Yeah. And it was hard for me to watch him go through that. Yeah. Because he loves being a dad. And so anyways, so we had to spend another 4 months apart, and that was a difficult time. That was a difficult time to be apart from him like that. So yeah.
So let's go to that February. That February.
Yeah, so he deployed in September and was able to come home so he deployed September 20th, and then January, I think it was the 4th or the 5th. Well, he called me just right before Christmas and said, hey, I know we talked about me coming home in May because that was our wedding anniversary for his R&R, or like rest and recuperation or whatever. Right. Like, I always think of rest and relaxation, and stuff. But anyways, and he said, but one of the guys said, like, hey, he had like ATVs in Indiana or something like that, and he's like, does anybody want to switch me because the snow's still out there and I can't ride my ATVs? And Michael's like, my hand just shot up. I didn't even think about it. He's like, is that okay? And I was like, why? It's so funny. Can I come home and see you? Like, what am I going to say? No, I would never say that. But I was so excited I got to see him. So he came in, he was home for 2 weeks with us again. And then he flew back out on his birthday, his 31st birthday, January 19th. And 5 weeks later.
And where was he?
So he was in Iraq.
He
was in Iraq. Yep. So he had been there since September. Yep. He was in this, it was Balad. He was in Balad. And he was the gunner on the Striker over there. So a Striker is like a tank, but without like the like rotating thing. It's got the wheels instead and stuff. So he had a 50 caliber machine gun that he named Stella, because we name everything in our family. You know that, you know, we name everything. So Stella was his gun. And so they would do all these different patrols, and, you know, they're looking for these terrorists and different things. And anyways, and it was relatively quiet, you know, in a way. You know, they would meet villages and, you know, do things with kids, and, you know, and he always asked me to send him candy to give to the kids. Like, cause he, not that he treated himself like a parade, but, you know, they'd have to make sure the kids were standing far back, you know, cause sadly they're not allowed to stop over there because of just different serious situations that can happen and stuff. But he would always ask me to send him candy so that he could go around the villages and give them to the kids. And he would give them pens because they wanted him to teach them English. I mean, kids just flock to him. They flock to him because they can just see the love that he has for learning, his love for knowledge, you know, and how important that is. And anyways, so we got, so he was just doing all that, you know, and stuff. And so we had February 22nd was our son Kai, our oldest one. It was his 6th birthday. So I still remembered, you know, talking to him like the day before, or like that. It was the 20th or 21st. No, I think it was the 20th. Yeah, because my niece was born that day. And, you know, that we were able to send him a picture of her and stuff. And he was headed out on a mission. Nothing different, you know, than any other time. And anyways, and so, you know, I'm just kind of doing our thing, just our regular thing. You know, we'll wait for Dad to get back so we can hear from him, you know. So we had Kai's birthday on the 22nd. And then the next day, I had picked him up from preschool. He was in preschool at the time. And I was actually on our blog blogging about his birthday, because if Michael couldn't get on the phone with us in Iraq, he would check our blog and stuff. And that was a way I could keep him updated on what we were doing without having to have him wait in line for phone calls and different things like that. And anyways, and I was in the middle of that. And I was living with my in-laws at the time down in American Fork. And I thought I heard the door, you know, knock or whatever, but not really thinking about it. And Kai came downstairs and he's like, "Mom, someone's at the door," you know, in just like that cute little 6-year-old voice, you know, that they have. And honestly, at first I was just like, that's nice, you know, cause I'm trying to get this done before he gets back from this mission. And, you know, and he's like, "Mom, they're still there." Cause they just kept knocking. And I was just like, oh my heck, I don't want to buy anything. I just thought it was somebody trying to sell me something. I'm like, do people not understand what I'm trying to do here? You know, got things I got to do, right? And stuff. And then finally, the third time he says, "Mom, they're not going away," you know, but it's more probably, I'm sure it was more like, "Mom, can they quit interrupting my video game playing that I'm doing," you know, type thing. And so I kind of tromped up the stairs, like just ready to give this person like a piece of my mind as much as I can, because I'm not, I'm not a very confrontational person, but I'm just kind of like, dude, like I'm trying to get stuff done. Do you not understand? No means no type thing. Anyways. And my in-laws have this door that has 2 glass pieces at the top, and through it I could see like a military beret. And immediately my heart just dropped. We've seen all the movies, read all the books. They don't show up at your doorstep if they've just been in an accident, you know? They're there because they have to deliver the most terrible news to you. And they have to physically do it in person. And so I opened up that door, and there were 2 military people standing there. You could tell one was like a chaplain, you know, like a religious person. And then the other one was like a commanding officer. And, you know, and I remembered opening up that screen door that was just, it's glass at the time because it was cold. "Are you Amy Alleman? Are you Mrs. Amy Alleman?" "Yeah." But inwardly I was like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. But you go into like a survival mode because your brain's trying to process what is coming, but you hope it's not coming. And so then they said, can we come in? Yeah. No, you may not. Inwardly, that's what I was thinking. But I let them in, and I literally, I sat down and I just thought, maybe they're just going to tell me, I don't know. We'll think of anything other than the worst. And that's when they started, do not envy that job for people, but we regret to inform you that your husband, Michael, was killed in service this morning. At this time, and, on a mission that they were on it. And it's unlike anything I've ever been able to describe. Just feeling like you were like, that feeling when you go underwater and you can hear noise, but there's not. It doesn't make any sense. That's what it felt like to me. I'm hearing them keep talking at me, but it just sounds like, the teacher from the Peanuts, like, wah, 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 wah. That's what it felt like to me. And at the same time, my brain is trying to wrap itself around what has just happened and what that means and what the ramifications are of it. And like I said, your brain just does 1,000,000 miles a minute. And immediately, I'm never going to watch another movie with him. I'm never going to see him walk through that door again. I'm never going to hear his laugh. I'm never going to see him with his kids again. He won't get to take Kai to preschool or first grade. He won't be there for their baptisms, for their weddings, for whatever things that they have, their high school graduations, whatever it is. Every plan, every dream was dead. And it was the worst thing ever. But in that absolute moment of darkness, of just, the pain that you're just trying to even, but your mind won't let you feel it in a way. It just, I swear it like secretes like this numb feeling at the same time. I don't know how to describe it. It's
like a protective measure.
Yeah, just to protect. Yeah, absolutely. I felt the most overwhelming feeling of peace. And it felt like the Savior just wrapped me up in the most gentle hug. And was just like, going back to that hymnal testimony meeting, everything's gonna be okay. And I have held on to that every day ever since.
I remember when you called Emily to tell her. And Emily got off the phone and she was crying and she said, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. And I said, well, how did Amy sound? And she said, she kind of sounded okay, actually. Yeah. She sounded like, I don't know, like she was being strengthened or comforted or something. And from that time forward, for the next week or two, even a month or two, it seemed like you had this sustainability that was really miraculous, and and that's not to diminish the pain that was actually happening as well.
No, yeah.
But it was pretty amazing to watch. I remember just the funeral as well, just like watching you just going, how is she doing this?
And
you spoke at his funeral.
I did speak at his funeral. He was such a private person that I just knew he wouldn't have, he probably didn't even want a funeral. He probably wanted us to just throw him in the ground. I'm like, sorry, bud, I get final say this part. So we have to honor you. Yeah. We have to honor you, and it was it's strange when I tell people it was such an amazing experience though, to just feel it, just this, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to describe it. Just that love for this person who gave everything literally, for me, for our children, for everybody in this country, for all of his students, for his mom and his dad and his siblings, and just because that's just the kind of person that he is.
Yeah.
I've never met anyone like him, you know, and I always just think how grateful I was that he wanted to be with me, you know, and that he sees all my good qualities and sees the person that I can become, you know, and I know if he was here right now, he'd be like, oh, she's the one that, you know. Like,
yeah, that's right.
He really would.
Isn't that the beautiful thing is that we see the flaws in each other and yet we still choose each other. And that is romantic.
It really
right?
is.
That's the best thing of all. It
really is. Knowing, all the things that, you know, I've gone through or struggled with, or that he just loves me no matter what, you know? And, but yeah, I do remember just looking back, and God just carried me through that whole thing, that whole year. Yeah. Losing a baby and then literally burying my husband about a year later. Yeah. You know, like it's a lot to handle. Yeah. But he did, and you know, and I do have people ask me that, how do you do it? How did you do it? The grace of God. I'm serious. Like, and I'm not even just saying that. He has carried me.
You know, and Emily and I, maybe this is where we'll go next, but Emily and I, we saw that strength. And then we also, and you know, we would say to each other, one day she's going to face these things and it's going to come crumbling down. She's going to have to face that. And I'd like to talk about that next.
Absolutely.
I was so honored. I mean, one of the greatest honors of my life, truly, was that you asked me to speak at Michael's funeral. And I remember going, how do I do this? How do I give this talk? Because, you know, Michael was so private. And as much as we were around you guys, he was so quiet. Yeah. And so I remember I wrote a full talk, and then the day of the funeral, the morning of the funeral, I threw the talk out.
I remember you telling me that.
And I was like, this isn't right. I got to redo this. And so I rewrote this talk, and I paid respect to Michael by quoting the shortest verse of all Scripture, because a man of few words, happy. Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But then it was attached to this incredible story. Yeah. And the verse, for those that don't know, is the two words are Jesus wept. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing about that story is Jesus, who had this very, very close friend, and his name's Lazarus, and he got word that Lazarus was sick. Yeah. And then he goes to, he lets Lazarus die. Yeah. And then he runs in after that, after he'd been dead for a couple of days. He shows up, everybody's in a panic. Mm-hmm. And he's like, just trust me, it's okay. And then he sees that everybody's crying. And I always say this part that, man, if I'm Jesus and I have that fix-it mentality, right? Yeah. That I'm going to say, hey, everybody, watch what I can do. Yeah. I'm gonna fix this because I'm gonna raise him from the dead. So don't cry. Yeah. Everything's okay. Yeah. But it wasn't that Jesus in that moment chose to weep with them. Yeah. Even though he's gonna fix it.
He's gonna fix it.
I mean, that's such a beautiful example. Yes. And so that's what I felt as I was doing that is, hey, Amy, we're here to weep with you.
Yeah. And I still remember that like it was yesterday, and it's been over 15 and a half years, you know, and I can still remember you. I can picture it so clear in my mind saying that.
Yeah. And although it was a sacred honor, it's like that message has stayed with me so much. I can't tell you how many times I've relayed that story, because it was like that morning, this message of compassion and to mourn with those that mourn.
Yes. Yes. And
he sets the perfect example.
I'm the same way. I've used your talk so many times in my own life and relaying that same thing, you know, and I still have people ask me to this day for your talk. I can still have it in my email and I give it to them. Yeah. Cause it was amazing. And just the way that cause you know, I mean, as much as it is for obviously, and we so thank you for doing that. There were so many people in that congregation besides myself that all needed to hear that. they needed to know that Jesus weeps with them. You know, because I bet we could I bet every single person in there had something difficult that they were going through. And to know that God does not look at them like, oh, will you just pull yourself together?
Yeah.
No, he's going to cry with you.
So we didn't have to do much crying with you for a while. You were doing so good.
Yeah, I was.
And then tell us what happened next.
So what happened was so my husband was killed in February. The troops were coming home in September, right? So in a way, my life never changed.
Yeah.
In a sense, you know? And my everyday life was the same, other than the fact I was using my blog as an outlet, you know, to write about things and stuff. But Micheal just didn't call home anymore. That was really the difference. And as hard as it was, that was actually a blessing for my children, that they had gotten used to their dad being gone. And I look at that time apart, even that time in Vegas, as a preparation period for me.
I was going to say, when you were telling about it, I was like, little did you know.
Little did I know. And so when I thought he went to basic training, I was like, okay, well, I've done this before. We can do it. We can make it through it. We can make it through it. We can make it through it. The tour in Iraq, you know, and all this stuff. And then when he died, it was like, okay, how are we going to do this one? You know? You ride the highs of, I don't know how to word it, the support that people give you, you know. And then it wasn't so I set all these goals for myself, right? I'm gonna run it was my first marathon since I had done the one right before we started dating. I was training 5-6 days a week. I mean, I cut out every ounce of sugar. That was hard. And you know, and stuff. And so I ran the marathon the same day he was supposed to come home from Iraq. And it was this huge tribute to him, right? And that's where I felt the first inklings of, because I had set this big goal, I had accomplished it, and Micheal was still dead. And I don't think I had actually let myself come to terms with that.
Processing the reality of it.
Yeah, processing the reality of it, because my life would have been no different. He would have still been in Iraq, you know.
So it's almost like with the events of the death, there's lots of events, right? It's a lot of pomp and circumstance out of compassion and mourning.
No, exactly.
And you kind of go from event to event.
You do.
And then it's the calm after that that's not calm. It's like, okay, now I've got to really face the rest of my life.
Yep. And that was where I felt it start to, just like I said, those little things, those little inches, you know. And I would just shove them down, and I would bottle them, and I would just do all the things, because in my head, everyone always told me, you're just so amazing. I don't know how you're doing this. You're so amazing. And there was nothing wrong with that. I was very appreciative of it. But my own brain created this. Well, if I act any different, then I'm not amazing.
So you felt pressure because of what people were saying.
Because of what people were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's weird, because in a way I'm like, well, I was so grateful for that, but I thought it meant that I couldn't be any different than how I was.
So that's such an important point for us to recognize as listeners. And maybe we just hit that right now while you're addressing it. Like, as someone who wants to support someone with a loss, how do you convey support without burdening them with more responsibility?
Yeah. You know, one of the biggest things I've learned, and you know, Emily's and you are as well, a big component of this, is you just listen. You just listen. Sometimes you don't want to be cheered up. Sometimes you don't want to be buoyed up. You're like, I want to sit in my sorrow and I want to feel it.
Yeah. And
I used to get really irritated with people that would try to cheer me up.
Yeah.
I was like, just stop it.
Yeah.
You know, because then my mom would say my little defiant side comes out. I'm a pretty congenial person until people start to back me into a corner or tell me how I'm supposed to feel. And I'm like,
yeah,
no. And that's one thing that I've learned with Michael's death. Is like with widow. I mean, it can be in any instance, but don't tell people how to feel, and let them feel what they're feeling.
And I know that you faced a lot of suggestions from people like, hey, the return of your happiness will come faster if you move to marriage or get remarried, get into a relationship. Yes. And I know that you have felt very strongly that was not the plan that you wanted.
Exactly. Yeah. I've known that from the get-go.
Yeah.
And here I am 15 years later and nothing's different.
Right.
Now, let me preface that by saying that I in no way say that my way is right.
Right.
You know what I mean? I know so many widowed friends who have gotten remarried and are very happy.
Yeah.
And I know some that haven't and are very happy. It's just like anything else. Everybody's journey is their own.
It's your journey.
And this is mine.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I want people to respect my journey. And so in turn, I respect people's journeys. It's taken me a while to get to that place because I would make friends with people and then they get remarried. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm just by myself again. You know what I mean? Or whatever. And even like sometimes with married couples, you guys never made me feel like this, but you know, it's just like, well, I'm just always the odd wheel. You know, like whatever it is, I'm just the extra one, you know, and
we've
stuff.
traveled the nation together.
We've gone all
California,
over the place. Yeah,
New York City.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And it has been so much fun. And I'm so grateful that you guys.
But even in those moments, I remember there's times like we're at 9/11 Memorial.
Yeah.
And there's this sense of this third wheel feeling for you, and you just miss Micheal.
Yeah, and it has nothing. You know, it's nothing against you guys. It has nothing to do with that. It's just like, oh man, I wish he was here with me to experience this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that is, sorry, what was our original question?
No, I was just asking about like people suggesting marriage,
people suggesting
but it's not your journey.
And it was, and that is probably, and I over the years I've realized that I do not have a problem with people asking me if I have or have not gotten remarried. The part I have an issue with is that once I tell you my answer, don't try and change my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know my mind.
Yeah.
I know what I want.
Yeah.
You know? So just
that is great for us to remember.
Yeah.
Because I love that you identify that just sit with me.
Yeah.
And maybe I want to feel the pain.
Yeah.
It's part of the mourning and the healing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me feel the pain and just be there while I'm feeling the pain.
While I'm feeling the pain. And here's the other thing too, is that that feeling that pain does not mean that you have a lack of faith.
Yeah.
And in the early parts of my journey into this, that's what I misconceived.
You were thinking because I have pain, it means I don't have enough faith.
I don't have enough faith. I don't believe in eternity. I don't believe that, like whatever it was.
So then you've experienced a level of shame.
For
your mourning.
Yeah, level of shame for what I was feeling. And I just kept bottling it.
Yeah.
I just kept shoving it down more and more and more. And I could feel it as the days went on. We'd hit, because now we're hitting the point where we're hitting our first Thanksgiving after Michael's died. I mean, he wasn't there for the other ones, but at least he was alive. He could call us. We could talk to him. You're hitting the big holidays and stuff, and you hit Christmas. And I remember I could feel it, this pressure building inside me that just like, it reminds me of, like the Horcruxes and like the little sound in it. Like, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Just this dark, gnawing feeling that was trying to break out, and I would not let it. I kept it just bottled down so tight.
Were you just afraid of what would happen if you let it out?
Yeah. Didn't want to think about it, really. I literally thought, the second coming will happen before then.
Mm-hmm. I'll just keep it in.
I'll just keep keep holding it. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
God knows how much I love Michael. He's not going to keep me separated him for very long.
Yeah.
Hence big eyes,
Right.
And so it was right around, it was just a little bit before his first anniversary. We were in January of 2010 at this point. And to the point where I was starting to get hot and cold flashes. Like I was sick. I was sick to my stomach all the time. I got down to a pretty low weight because I couldn't eat. I was having trouble sleeping, and no matter how much I prayed, I didn't feel any better because it didn't stop.
Right.
And then I thought, well, there must be something wrong with my prayers.
Not enough faith.
Not
worthy enough.
Not worthy enough.
Yeah.
I must be doing something wrong.
Right.
Just all those things. And
can I say something about that? Because I think this is so important too, is that the more I've talked to people with pain and trauma or mental illness or something like that, especially when they're striving to feel something spiritual, that pain is just real. It's a dominant pain, and it's not an indicator of a lack of faith or worthiness. I always use the phrase, when was the last time you felt the Spirit when you stubbed your toe? It just doesn't happen.
It just doesn't happen.
Right?
Yeah.
And so once again, here I'm in another interview and I hear the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't feel the Spirit. There's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
When, well, you've been through a lot of trauma. You've been through a lot of pain.
Yeah.
No wonder it's
Yeah.
hard to feel the Spirit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and
But you don't think that at
no,
the time,
you don't
right?
think it. And looking back, I realized, like, I remember thinking this once, that like Micheal I had never really dealt with death in a sense. I had one grandpa that had passed away, but I was never close to him because he grew up miles, like a long way from us. I saw him a couple times in my childhood. He died when I was a senior in high school, but I remember going to see him and thinking, oh, that's really sad, but I didn't know him. I still had all my mom's parents are still alive,
Mm-hmm.
today and stuff. And so I had never really dealt with death.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I remember thinking, before we even started this whole journey, his is the only death I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it. And I feel like I kind of jinxed myself a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
But not really, because Heavenly Father has a plan. But I felt like I was just thrown into the deep end. Like, well, this is how I'm going to teach you. And so I finally hit a point where I was like, I need some type of outlet because I feel like I'm going crazy.
When you say this is how I'm going to teach you, did you feel like Heavenly Father or God was punishing you, or like
Nope.
you didn't feel like it was vindictive?
Nope.
You
Nope.
just felt like
It's strangely enough is just like, it kind of reminded me of all the lessons, that like my mom and dad would teach me. I know my mom and my dad love me. I know that they were teaching me it because it would help me grow. It would help me learn. Obviously not on this type of scale.
Right.
But I felt that love. I don't know how to describe it, but I just felt that Heavenly Father, I felt very, I don't know how to word it. I felt very protected. Like he threw me in the deep end, but he's there with me. But he's teaching me how to swim because he's like, you've got a lot ahead of you. And, you're gonna be able to help people. But right now I needed him to help me. I don't even know if that makes sense.
Totally.
But I remembered knowing other people who were widowed, or I met other people who were widowed, and I really connected with them because they had gone through that same trauma.
Yeah.
And I remembered, and one of them told me, you will come to a point in your life where you will realize that you are the teacher.
Yeah.
Instead of the person that they're turning to. And it's not always just widowhood.
Right.
I think it's just everything. All of the trials in life. But no, I never felt like God was punishing me.
Yeah.
I don't know how to word that.
So let me ask you basically two questions.
Okay.
One is, what did you do to get help?
Okay.
Specifically, what worked for you? What didn't work?
Yeah.
And then I want to ask you about how you've been able to help others because of that experience. So let's start with that first one.
Take first. Okay, so I remembered that I called my sister. My sister had gone through some different depression things, and stuff. And I called her, and she's the one that she had a baby 3 days before Micheal died. And we were all really close.
I remember
and it
that.
hurt her really hard. Micheal was like her brother.
Yeah.
And that was very difficult. And I remembered her going through all of her therapy stuff. And it's so strange because in my head, I never once thought my sister was crazy. As you know, we kind of tend to think of those like terms, I guess. But I kind of still had that stigma in my head. Mm-hmm. That like, well, only people that have serious issues go to therapy,
Like loony bin.
Yeah, type thing. That's kind of what has just been portrayed in our media. Or just all the different things, Anyways, and so I called her and I just said, and I remember her telling me, maybe you should go find a therapist. And I just thought, like, well, then I'd have to admit that I don't have it all together. And I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? It was kind of like I didn't want to face that music.
Yeah.
Didn't want to face that music. And also because I knew the second I opened it up, then I actually had to, as sad as it sounds, over a year later, I had to actually acknowledge that he was dead and he was not coming back, and that's a tough pill to swallow.
So it's almost like you had a level of denial.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Denial was like my best friend.
Yeah.
Those like my buddy you know, dolls that you grow up with. Yeah, that was my buddy.
So you
Denial
could even use the promises of your faith as your source of denial.
Yeah.
Like, well, Savior's going to come again.
Savior's
He's
gonna
going to be
come again. I'll see him.
resurrected.
Yeah, it's fine.
I don't need to deal with this.
Fine. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I ate that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I remembered then that I just remembered having this feeling of just like, your sister is right, and you need to get help. So I called her back probably about an hour later and stuff. And she said, well, you need to find somebody down there that is going to be able to help you. Cause she had found some people where she lived, you know, she was living in Davis County at the time. And it actually was your sister that I talked to.
It
Jill.
was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she recommended a therapist at BYU that I think she had asked around for people or something like that.
How do I not remember that?
I don't know.
Wow.
And yeah, I think it was just really, and I can't even remember how that came about.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I talked to Emily about it and maybe she said that. Yeah. But I just remembered that Jill was a part.
Yeah, my mom. Yeah, my sister had gone through
a
lot of getting help, and
yes, exactly. And
now she's a therapist.
Yeah, oh, how even
so
better,
isn't that interesting?
Right? Like,
yeah.
yes, that is interesting. Oh, I mean, she's so fantastic. But, anyways, and so I found one at BYU that I went to, and I just remember just feeling this massive, like, I don't know how to word vomit.
Yeah.
You know, and all that darkness and that sludge and the Horcrux stuff just pouring out of me, because here was someone who I didn't have to worry about holding up an image, you know, and it kind of makes me a little sick to even think about how I used to live my life like that. Do you know what I mean? And just letting him just know all of the deep, dark things inside of me that were just pouring out. And I'm sure he's like, this lady might be crazy, because I was sobbing one minute and then I would laugh the next, because humor is my coping mechanism, and especially dark humor. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know,
I know,
that. And and stuff. And so, and I just remembered feeling this, not like a weight lifted, but just the first inklings of a little bit of light. I you know, and then as we progressed, him helping me work through the stages of grief. Ooh, anger was getting past denial was hard, because you want to hold on to that thing like a security blanket. Like, nope, if I live in this world, everything's fine. Yeah, everything's fine. It's fine. I'm fine. And everything's not fine.
You know, one important point I think you made there, and I really want to highlight, is you felt like it could come pouring out, and the environment that provided that was that you felt safe to share it, because you weren't trying to uphold some kind of reputation.
Yep.
See, to me, that is such an important point for all people to recognize about the process of therapy, is that therapy is, I often hear people say, so I got to go pay someone money to tell them my problems. They don't understand that concept. And you go, no, what you don't understand is they're providing you something you don't give yourself, because we're trying to uphold these reputations in all of our relationships with other people. It's almost like you have to have such an important relationship to have that vented area.
No, you do. And it is, I just remembered thinking, like, just that I knew it was going to take a long time, but just feeling that relief, you know, and in a sense, but you know, kind of in a way, as soon as I got done, I was like, oh, that was nice. Like, you know, like, should I go back? I'm sure I probably worked through everything, you know, but thankfully I didn't. I made that next appointment. I kept going and going and going and going. And I was going weekly, you know, and I was just paying full price for everything.
So let me ask you, are you still going?
As of right this second, no.
How long did you go?
Let's see. Probably...
Because he's been dead 15 years.
He's been dead 15 years. So
took
I
a year
would
to
say,
get there.
So it took me a year to get there. So 2010, I would say I probably went for close to 12 years.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And it was the best thing.
That's
and
hard work.
And I had a hard time leaving my therapist down there when I moved, because I was living with my in-laws, and then I moved up here, built a house, you know, and I was like, well, great. Who am I going to find now?
Yeah.
you know, and once again, you guys pulled through for me because you guys recommended my therapist to me. And I went to him for, probably I went to him for at least 10 years.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And stuff. And I still check in with him occasionally.
Sure.
But yeah, really consistently. And he was an absolute blessing in my life.
What an amazing endorsement for a healthy way to deal with a very traumatic experience.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I could go on for hours about that, but it was a life changer.
And so tell me then, if you were to, you mentioned that one day you'll find that you're now the teacher. And here you are, you're sitting in a teacher chair, right? This podcast is an opportunity for you. Yeah. You're teaching us about this.
Yeah.
So what have you found that I don't know if this is the right word to use, but okay, that you're thankful to be able to teach because of what you've been through?
I think the biggest thing is to just be true to yourself. You know, I'm a spaz. I'll admit it. I'm awkward. I make every conversation awkward. I think it's like an Olympic sport for me. Do you know what I mean?
That's why we love you.
I know.
Yeah.
I do. I love to laugh. I honestly think that is one of my biggest things is I think when I first meet people, and let's say we get talking about different things, I meet a lot of people through my work, different things like that, you know, and I'll know them for months and months, maybe even years. And then something might come up where I'll talk about my dead husband and they're like, what? And they tell me there's no way you're too happy. And I'm like, well, first of all, it's just because I'm married to an amazing man who, you know, gives me, like, this is how I honor him. I get up every day and I live my life to the best of my ability so that I can come home and see him and tell him all kinds of stories.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for that day. But making people laugh is, and letting people laugh. Because sometimes I think they go, am I supposed to laugh at that? She made a joke about her dead husband. Can I laugh about that? Yeah. Yes, you can. At least in my house, you can.
In a way, that's a method of smashing a stigma, right?
Yeah.
Because, we can't have humor in pain.
Oh my gosh, I opened up my husband's funeral with a joke.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I decorated our headstone, you know, like in a very funny way. I put M&Ms on our headstone and did all, I think for me, it's that you live who you are. And I was so done with trying to be this perfect version. Yeah. I remember one day when I was actually in the primary presidency, and it was my first time in a primary presidency, which is like where we teach young children with our, you know, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I remember coming home and just being like, oh my gosh. And I remember kneeling down and saying, Heavenly Father, I'm such a spaz. Like, what's wrong with me? Type thing. You know, even then, and this is years after Micheal passed away. And he's just like, sometimes I need it. Like, don't stop being you. Be yourself, you know, and that's okay. And to, I try to be very, very real. Yeah. If you want to talk about the hard stuff, let's talk about the hard stuff. Let's talk about the raw stuff. It's okay to feel that way. It's okay to not feel okay. It's okay to feel depressed. It's okay to feel anxiety. It's okay to feel all those things because that's how you cope. Yeah. And if you find yourself with people who maybe, it's difficult to let yourself be that way. Yeah. Then, not that I'm saying you have to get rid of your friends or just that, you know, but you should be around people who allow you to be yourself. And that's something that I've learned over the years is I don't like to associate with people that, I guess,
trying to force you to be something
trying to force
else.
me to be something else. I'm like, I'm not gonna, no. Yeah. I've gone through a lot. I've lived through a lot. I've endured a lot, and I'm just, I'm going to be who I am.
Be me.
I'm just going to be me.
You know, in closing, let me, just two things. Yeah. One is you said that Michael's rationalization for joining the armed forces was he wanted to be able to shake George Washington's hand and say that he did his part. Yeah. And that he backed it up. Yeah. And I hear the same message that you want to have with Michael. Yeah. As you see him again. Yeah. It's I did my part. And I'm so glad to be able to shake your, well, it'd be more than a shake for you too.
Yeah. Big old head.
I did my part. Yeah. And then the last thing I want our listeners to know is the great message that you have on Michael's tombstone. Do you want to just share quickly what that is?
I was just, like, which one are you talking about? The front one or the back one?
The one on the back.
The one on the back. I was like thinking about
the
temple one.
The two or not.
Yeah. So when my husband proposed to me, we were on the top floor of the Joseph Smith Memorial Building in Salt Lake, and it was December 31st. Very magical moment, very magical. Snow's falling and everything. And he big reader. I mean, like, I can't even tell you how much he read. Voracious reader of everything. Stephen Hawking. He even read Twilight. Don't hold that against him. Anybody if they don't like it. Right? Yeah. But anyways, a very, very smart man. Anyways, but he loved poetry, and he quoted this part of a poem from E.E. Cummings that said, "One's not half of two; it's two or halves of one." And I put that on the back of our headstone because he is my other half. And that we're not. One is not just half of two; it's two are halves of one.
And that's beautiful because what you've discovered is I get to be me.
Yeah.
So you together, he's him, you are you.
And he has always let me be me.
Two halves is one.
Two halves is one. And he's just the best. I just don't even know how to word it, but and I have felt over the years, he is very active in my life. And I have felt many, many times how proud he is of me.
Amy, thank you so much. I know there's so many more things you could share with people, and I know you have shared some great things through many events over the years. Yeah. But I thank you for taking us on your journey and helping us see the depths of it, helping us to really highlight some things that our listeners can take and know how to help others when they experience trauma like you've been through. And I love you, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
Amy.
letting me share, because it's a part that feels like it just keeps his memory alive even more. And I love talking about him. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.